Hacking in competitive Pokemon has been a problem since the game's inception. Last year at the 2023 Pokemon World Championships, there were a ton of DQs because of it. It was the first year they really decided to crack down on this, and the Pokemon Company International has kinda kept up their hack checks ever since. One person who didn't get DQ'd though was my friend and fellow YouTuber Freezeye, because I built the team that he went to Worlds with, without glitching, cheating, or hacking. Now it's time for the 2024 Pokemon World Championship, and apparently the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC has improved the ease of team building a ton. But people say that every time there's a new game or DLC, so I think we're gonna have to test it. Unfortunately, Freezeye isn't going to Worlds this year. So to run this test, I would have to find someone else who would let me build their team. Meet Bugsy, a VGC player and friend I met at the 2023 Hartford Regional. They managed to qualify for Worlds and agreed to let me build their team for the tournament. I'll be comparing how long it takes me to build Bugsy's team to how long it took me to build Freezeye's team back then. And along the way, we'll see what improved, what didn't, and if the changes were enough. Before we build the team though, let's understand the rules for this challenge. The first thing to note is that I'll be using a freshly completed copy of Pokemon Violet and its DLC. I played through the entire story up until capturing Terapagos. I've also unlocked 6-star raids, but I haven't gone out of my way to catch anything special or get any items in particular. This is a blank slate save. The second thing to note is that there's not going to be any glitches allowed. This includes the clone glitches in Scarlet and Violet 1.0 up until the most recent Smeargle clone glitch. I want to assess how Game Freak intended for team building to work, and they didn't intend glitches. The third thing to note is that just like with Freezeye's team, I'm allowing the use of Pokemon caught in older games. For years, you were only able to use Pokemon caught in the generation the VGC tournament was being held for. This is what the markings next to the Pokemon were for on their summary screen, like the hexagon from Kalos or the cross from Alola. But this went away in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. You can now use Pokemon all the way back from your copy of Emerald in a tournament if you so choose. Now, for Freezeye's team, I did a little experiment to see which game would be the fastest. I used a ton of old games and compared them to Scarlet and Violet's speed. For Bugsy's team, that won't be the case. I am only going to use old games when I am absolutely required to. I'll also try to use the most recent of said old games if I can help it. This is because you're more likely to own a 3DS game than a DS game, depending on your age and when you started playing VGC. Fourth, and as always, I'm allowing RNG manipulation when available. This technique lets me manipulate the random luck in the game without hacking or modding in any way, shape, or form. It has historically been allowed in VGC, and it is not a glitch. Lastly, I'll be timing the whole thing with a live timer somewhere in the corner of the video. Each task will be timed individually, and I'll add everything up at the end. Each Pokemon I gather counts as a task, and any other side thing that I have to do will be timed separately as well. With that, let's take a look at the team. Now, it might not look so bad at first, but there's actually two problematic Pokemon immediately. Galarian, Moltres, and Zamazenta are exclusive to Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. Well, Zamazenta is exclusive to Shield, but Moltres isn't both. But Moltres is exclusive to the DLC of both of those games. Wait, I hear you yell. Didn't they introduce a bunch of legendary Pokemon from older games available via Snacksworth in the Blueberry Academy? Well, yes they did, but for some reason they excluded Zamazenta, Zacian, Eternatus, Calyrex, but not its horses, the Galarian birds, the Regis, every Generation 4 legendary, and the Forces of Nature. All of these Pokemon on the screen are available to use in Reg G, which is the World Championship format, but require you to purchase an older Pokemon game to catch them. Are every single one of these Pokemon meta-relevant threats? No, of course not. Even Moltres here is kind of a niche pick at 1.4% usage according to Pikalytic. But Zamazenta is a common pick, and so are, I don't know, both Calyrex forms. Yes, you can catch the horses in Scarlet and Violet, but you need Calyrex itself to form Shadow Rider and Ice Rider, and it's only available in the Crown Tundra DLC. These are two of the best Pokemon in the format. And the horse's IVs don't matter. Calyrex's IVs are what matters. So you have to reset for it in Crown Tundra. You can't get a random Calyrex from anywhere. While you can purchase Sword and Shield for around 30 to 40 bucks these days, the DLC is still the full price of $30 since it's digital only. That means that Calyrex is a $70 Pokemon if you do not own Sword and Shield already, as is Moltres. And this is a real problem. Just 5 days before the World Championship, Marcus Stadler, aka 13Yoshi37, a well-known EU VGC player, DM'd me on Twitter asking if I had a Calyrex available to reset for it, because he caught both of his, and a friend who was resetting one for him accidentally caught the wrong speed IV. This is still pay to win, and the Pokemon Company and Game Freak are directly benefiting from this. I would bet money that the Crown Tundra DLC sales suddenly spiked on the eShop when Regulation G was announced, but Calyrex was not available via Snacksworth. Players should not have an advantage from owning older games to get more Pokemon or rarer Pokemon, even if they are longtime fans. This is the definition of a pay-to-win advantage. And Worlds had the exact same issue last year. They fixed this, or so I thought, by putting Urshifu and the horses in the game, but then they broke it again by not putting these fellows in. It really does feel like they're trying to milk their most loyal fans out of every possible cent. It's hard to not feel bitter about this, you know? They really just want you to buy Sword and Shield, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl to get these Pokemon. It's sad, honestly. BDSP and PLA are not even VGC games. It's reasonable for VGC players to have skipped them. There was no circuit for either game, and Pokemon Legends Arceus didn't even have versus battles. Oh, and while it's not a huge deal, Zamazenta is a version exclusive that's only available in the post-game. At least with Calyrex, you can kind of play through the Crown Tundra early on and relatively quickly, but Zamazenta, it's only from the post-game of Sword and Shield. If you don't have one, this is a really long playthrough to get one single Pokemon. I also see a lot of people say, well, if you're invested in VGC and going to all of these tournaments, you're probably a super fan anyway and own all of these games. This isn't the case, and Bugsy here proves it. They bought Shield just to get a Zamazenta for Regulation G 3 months ago, but haven't played through it because it's such a slog, and they've been busy with life things and tournament prep. VGC events are expensive. They cost time and money to travel to and practice for, so it's not unreasonable or unexpected for players to not own every single Pokemon game and use the trade feature or friends to try and save money. This isn't a professional sport where everyone who goes to these things makes a ton of money from sponsors. Okay, anyway, with that rant over, at least everything else is easy to catch, right? Well, for the most part, yes. Bugsy does have a few version-exclusive Pokemon in here, in Tyranitar and Fluttermane. Luckily, these aren't a huge deal anymore. You can get version exclusives by trading or joining your friends in a union circle to hunt them, so I think while kind of annoying, they're mostly innocuous issues for these games. So, for this team, I am playing 3 games. Scarlet for Fluttermane and Tyranitar, Shields for Zamazenta and Moltres, and Violet for everything else. But before I even catch anything, I have to do some prep work. The first thing on my list is setting up the terrarium in the Blueberry Academy. To do this, I'll be doing BBQs, or Blueberry Quests, and I'll be doing the group quests online. This is because Latios, a Pokemon that I need, is only available from Snacksworth via the group quests. Snacksworth is like a semi-version exclusive. He'll give you 9 Pokemon for solo quests on your game, and then 9 more for group quests for that specific game. And then there's 3 more who are always group quests in both games. Latios, who I need, is a group quest exclusive for Pokemon Violet. This is actually good news because group quests earn me BP much faster, and I will need a lot of it for 2 reasons. One is that I need to get 3000 BP to upgrade the coastal biome to let Grookey spawn there. And 2 is that I need to fully upgrade the item printer to Master Ball tier, since it's a very useful way to farm various items, and this also costs some BP. So I go online and I invite some people to my group and we begin spamming. BBQs are a bit repetitive, but they can be fun. The nice part about them is that oftentimes the quests you're doing earn you BP, yes, but they also give you additional resources. For example, the quest to KO 10 Pokemon using Auto Battle will give you Pokemon parts, which you can use for TM crafting and as the resources for the item print. And the pick 10 items up off the ground quest will often give you Terra Shards, Feathers, and Vitamins, which are essential for training a Pokemon. To break up the monotony of the BBQs, I occasionally would stop and spend some time at the item printer to upgrade it. You need to spend a total of 1000 BP on it and do 175 print jobs to upgrade it to the Master Ball level. After an hour and 20 minutes, I had upgraded the item printer all the way and also upgraded the coastal biome so Grookey could spawn. The last thing I needed to do was get Latios to spawn. Usually this can be a bit difficult since the Pokemon that Snacksworth spawns is random, but you can actually save and reset in front of him to get exactly what you want, which only took me 2 minutes. All in all, setting up the terrarium only took me 1 hour and 25 minutes. I don't think there's any comparable prep work with Freezeye's team. The game didn't have anything like this back then, so we'll say for now that Freezeye is at 0 and we're at 1 hour and 25. With that done, it's time to grind for money and a few other things using the item printer. This lovely gacha machine prints various different items if you give it Pokemon part. It can spit out PP Maxes, Terra Shards, bottle caps, and much more. The downside to it? Well, it's entirely random. You could get a ton of good and useful drops, or literal garbage. However, I did say I'd be using RNG manipulation, didn't I? That's right, the first and so far only RNG manip discovered in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is for this thing. Thanks to Anubis, Kphodix, Stella SSA, and Ishipoya for the discovery and testing done. And lucky for us, this RNG manip is really easy. All you have to do is get to this screen where you're being asked if you want to print an item. Then you go into the Switch's internal clock and change it to the date listed for the item that you want to print from this sheet that Anubis provided. I set a timer to match the seconds that I need to hit, leaving 1 or 2 seconds of room for the fade to black, and when the timer finishes counting down, I hit A to print. The first thing I'll be doing is a twofer, ability patches and Dark Terra shards. With a 28-second wait, with only 1 second of precision, I can get 8 ability patches and 18 Terra Dark shards. Now, you might think that 8 ability patches is insanely excessive, considering the team only has 6 Pokemon on it, and only 1 Pokemon is going to have its hidden ability. But I'm actually doing this because the ability patch sells for 125,000 Pokédollars. It is by far the most valuable item that you can get. One print like this, not counting the Terra Shard value, is worth $1 million exactly. I only really needed to do it 3 times to get enough Terra Dark Shards, as 3 million is probably more than enough money, but I did it 6 or 7 times for safe measure. This took me around 10 minutes total, and I definitely went overboard, and I missed a few of the RNGs despite it being pretty easy. But we're not done with the printer, no. We can actually get every single Terra Shard we need this way. In the item printer list from Anubis, there's options for every single Terra Shard to get 60 plus shards in 1 minute. So I do this for Dragon, Steel, Fire, Ghost, and Poison. This takes another 10 minutes or so. And I'll also say, you probably don't even need to do this. If you're doing BBQs, you're probably getting so many shards and bundles of 15 off the ground, you'll just have a ton of the thing. I don't even have the Glimmering Charm, and I easily have over 100 of every single Terra type. But having something quick and reliable is worth showcasing and explaining for this video, I think. Lastly, I'll be doing manips for PP maxes. I technically don't need to do this since I can buy PP ups at Chansey Supply, but it saves $120,000 per Pokemon, and it saves a lot of A presses. So another 10 minutes of printer manips, and we're done here. All in all, money farming, PP max farming, and Terra Shard farming took 30 minutes. This is a huge, gigantic, unbelievable difference. For Freeze Eye's team, I didn't count the amount of time spent farming money because the best way to do that back then was the Academy Ace tournament using an AFK setup. I set up a turbo controller with a Sylveon to mash A for me and win the tournament automatically over and over. It made like 125,000 per run, and each run was around 15 minutes. And I'd let the game run like this for 40 hours or so. Because I wasn't actively playing the game, I didn't count it towards the timer. I just counted the cost of the controller, which was 60 bucks, and the 10 minutes or so it took me to set up Sylveon to get good EVs and such. But here, not only do you not need the turbo controller, but you're earning 8 times the money that you would in a fraction of the time spent. And you're not making your Switch unusable for hours at a time. BB Maxes don't really matter here. At most, it was a nice little convenience. No, the real difference maker is the Terra Shards. For Freeze Eye's team, it took me 7 hours and 33 minutes to get all the Terra Shards I needed. 2 hours and 3 minutes for the Water Terra Shards, which I needed 100 of, 1.5 for Ghost, 2.5 for Grass, which I also needed 100 of, and 1.5 for Fire. Here, all of them were obtained literally in 10 minutes without the Glittering Charm. It's unbelievable. So Freeze Eye's team is now sitting at 7 hours and 43 minutes, while Bugsy's is at 1 hour and 55. A huge improvement already. Well, at this point, all my prep is done, so it's time to start catching Pokemon. The first mon I decided to tackle was Flutter Mane. Freeze Eye also had one of these, so we should have a pretty easy comparison here. This Pokemon needs to have a 0 IV in its attack stat to make sure it takes minimal damage from Foul Play and Confusion. Since Paradox Pokemon cannot breed, we just have to catch a ton of them until one of them randomly has a no good on its summary screen. The best way to do this is to buy or make an Encounter Power Ghost level 2 sandwich. So I cooked up a great vegetable sandwich and had a 0 attack Flutter Mane in about 20 minutes. For Freeze Eye, this took me 34 minutes. Not a huge difference. But I couldn't play favorites here. For Freeze Eye, I also went out of my way to shiny hunt a Flutter Mane for him with 0 attack. So of course I had to do the same for Bugsy. In case you don't know, Flutter Mane is by far the easiest and fastest shiny hunt to do because of the strange way Scarlet and Violet's spawning mechanics work. The short of it is, the game does not want ghosts to spawn during the daytime. But for some reason, it doesn't just prevent them from spawning, it lets them spawn, and then if it's daytime, it immediately despawns them. It does it so fast, you usually cannot see it happen. This despawner has an exception, though. It doesn't delete shinies. So I make a Sparkling Ghost Encounter Power 3 sandwich, courtesy of my good friend Papa Hefe's Recipes, and I load up the game during the daytime. You can force it to be a specific time of day by launching the game according to this chart. Then I just wait in Area 0. My favorite spot to stand is this rock, but you can stand anywhere, really. And dozens of Fluttermane are spawning and getting deleted instantly, so the spawner is moving quicker than usual, and when it hits a shiny, that Pokemon stays. And also, since I'm on Ghost Encounter Power level 3, nothing else spawns but Fluttermane. The hunt was rather quick, at an hour and 38 minutes to find a shiny, 0-attack Fluttermane, and I had to catch 8 shiny Fluttermane along the way. Freeze Eyes took 6 hours and 36 minutes to find. That's the luck of the draw though when you're shiny hunting. Don't worry, the shiny hunt is not counted towards the time. Obviously, that would be disingenuous. But I gotta send my friends to worlds with some cool Pokemon, you know? Okay, with Fluttermane captured, we have to train it up. For EVs, it needs 196 HP, 84 defense, 4 special attack, 4 special defense, and 220 speed. I also need to make sure its nature is timid via a mint change, and I need to give it the booster energy hold item. I also needed to purchase 5 bottle caps to max out its IVs using hyper training. EV training in these games is really simple. You just go to Chansey Supply and buy the vitamins in tens of what you would need. Vitamins give 10 EVs per use. In older gens, they can only give 100 EVs per stat this way, but these days there's no cap other than the 508 total EVs and the 252 EVs per stat. So I bought 19 HP ups, 8 irons, 1 zinc, and 22 carbos. I give them all to Fluttermane except the zinc, then I round out the non-10 EVs that I get using feathers. Each feather gives 1 EV, and you can find tons of them lying on the ground around all 3 maps that Scarlet and Violet have. They are great for micromanaging your EVs. I had a lot of every single feather except the Clever Feather, which is what gives you special defense. So I give 6 health feathers, 4 resist feathers, and 4 genius feathers to Fluttermane. Then I give them the final zinc as to not waste my few remaining Clever Feathers. At this point, it's just a quick trip to Montevideo to hyper train, and Fluttermane is all trained up. As for its moves, those are pretty easy. Moonblast and Shadow Ball are level up moves, which I can do using EXP candies that I found lying on the ground. I could also have manipulated them from the item printer if I wanted to. Protect and Thunder Wave are actually TMs from the BB Academy School store, so I picked those up using the BP that we gained earlier. The last thing is its item, the Booster Energy, which can only be acquired from a wild Paradox Pokemon at a 5% chance. So I run around Area 0 for a bit, looking for a Paradox Pokemon that has one, and eventually I find this Iron Hand, and Fluttermane is all done. I nicknamed them Varashal after one of my D&D characters, and all in all, from capture to train, it took me 33 minutes to train this Fluttermane. Up next is going to be Galarian Moltres, who I have to head into Pokemon Shield for. I was low-key dreading this, because Bugsy asked me to aim for a 0-attack Moltres. This Pokemon is not a quick reset. It's a roaming overworld Pokemon who flies around really fast, and you have to be pretty good on the Roto Bike to catch it. It also has 3 random IVs perfect, which means I have to hope that one of those isn't attack, and then the attack lands the 1 in 15, 0 or 1 IV that I need. If you think this is bad though, you should see Blood Moon Ursaluna. I made a whole video about how bad that single encounter is to reset for. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Anyway, I'm not going to deal with this malarkey. We're not in Violet anymore, Toto. We're in Sword and Shield, which means I have RNG manipulation on my side. This is actually the only Pokemon I have to RNG manip, and it's just for 0 attack. I'll fix up the IVs and nature with bottle caps and mints later. To understand what I'm going to do, we'll have to understand what RNG manips are and how they work in general. Computers have a very difficult time producing truly random values, so programmers have come up with very clever ways to fake them. These are called pseudo-random number generators, and Pokemon has used tons of different ones in the past. Typically, the game gets a value from somewhere, usually date and time, and then it converts that to a string of numbers and repeatedly does math to that value whenever the game needs to do something random, like turn an NPC, generate particle effects, or changing the pitch of Chatot custom cry. This will look random to the end user since they don't know the initial value or the math values that are added to it. All of this can be predicted, tracked, and controlled without any hacking. I just have to manually feed information into these programs, which are like big calculators, and then I can manipulate luck itself. In Shield, we can't control the initial value. It's a nanosecond timer in the system's CPU, but we can find out what it was. On a Pokemon summary screen, if you push in on the right analog stick, it plays one of 2 animations, one for physical attacks and one for special. Every time you do this, the game advances the RNG state by 1, and this is how we determine what our current RNG state is. We have to record 128 consecutive animations to find it, which is quite tedious. Not only that, we have to do it twice, once for a test run and once for the actual attempt. The way the manip itself works is we find our seed and then we fly to the map to catch Moltres. Moltres has all of its IVs decided when you land in the Isle of Armor, so you don't need to encounter it at a specific time, which is nice. After I catch the moltres, I have to use an IV calculator to figure out where I landed in the RNG sequence. And once I do that, I can get what is known as a fly calibration value, which is how much RNG advancement flying will cause because it's semi-randomized. Then I can reset and do all of this again, but this time with an actual target planned. I reset, find my seed, and there's a 0 attack moltres around 500 advances away from me. So I push in on the right stick a bunch of times while watching Zacian's animations, fly, and then I catch my moltre. I'll also note here, because I'm using a pro controller, I have access to button remapping. And I'm not actually pushing in on the right stick this many times. I swapped the push in on the right stick with Y, so I can actually push Y a bunch of times, which is much easier to do. Luckily, catching it wasn't too hard, but it can be tedious to find the dang thing. And there we have it, a 0 attack Galarian moltres. Another... And thus the perils of team building begin. Bugsy made a last-minute team swap and dropped Galarian moltres, who I made sure to obtain early on because I knew the RNG would be tedious. This is something I talked about with Freezeye's team as well, but let it be known, this can be an advantage of hacking compared to someone playing legitimately. If you hack your team the night before Worlds, you have as much time to change and tweak your team as you want. Here, that's not the case. I made sure to give myself a week of time to build this team properly, but told Bugsy not to worry about any changes made. And sure enough, I basically wasted an hour of my time doing this because more playtesting needed to happen. I think this is like a real concern, and a lot of people discount hacking over this too much. Okay, what's the new team then? Okay, luckily Fluttermane didn't change at all, and the only real difference is Landorus over moltres. Wait, that's still one of the unavailable Pokemon. Ugh. Okay, let's take a peep at this Lando. It's a special attacker, so it needs a 0 in attack as well. But where can I reset for this? Well, you might think that I would use the most recent game, Pokemon Legends Arceus, but I can't. You see, in Legends Arceus, you have no way to tell what a Pokemon's IV is. So if I catch Landorus, I have to save and then transfer it out of the game to check its IVs. That's 1 Landorus per game. Fun fact, this is the only way to get Enamorus. Who would prefer a 0 attack IV? No thanks. Alright, so the next closest game would be Pokemon Shield. You can catch Landorus in Dynamax Adventure here. But here's the thing. Each Dynamax Adventure will take like 10 minutes to run through. And then at the end, the Pokemon you get is guaranteed to have 3 perfect IVs. I just plugged my Blood Moon Ursaluna video to show you why that's not a good idea. 10-minute resets for a low chance? No thanks again. Okay, so what else? That's it for the Switch games, right? Well, if you want to get a Landorus, you have to go back to the 3DS. Now, Landorus is available in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but you need both Thundurus and Tornadus in your party, and then you have to find Landorus in an Ultra Wormhole. This is too time-consuming. When I built the 2017 World Championship team, it took me 5 hours to find Groudon in one of the wormhole. Once again, no thank you. I could reset for it in Omega Ruby, but that would take a while as well. So I opted to head all the way back to my copy of White 1, where I got Ray Rizzo's 2011 team, the first of these team building videos I ever did. Now, I know for a fact I've caught Thundurus here, but I haven't caught Landorus. And in White, I could do an RNG minute for it. And by the way, if you want a copy of White today to reset for one of the unavailable Pokemon, you're set back at least $80. Very cool. Another thing to say is that it's actually very common for a Landorus to have been caught. This is because Landorus Therain, not the Landorus that I'm using, is a very popular Pokemon and is widely used in many different VGC formats. So for the most part, people are going to have caught this Pokemon and used it already. You're very lucky if you have a game without one that's captured. One of the reasons I chose Pokemon White is that RNG manips are extremely easy in it. We can control the initial random value by changing our DS's date and time, and we just have to launch the game at the exact time down to the second, which is super easy using a special timer app that I have here. After that, I flip back and forth between these two Chadots, who have a recorded chatter cry, and then I start the encounter. And no joke, in literally 6 minutes, I have a 5 perfect IV, 0 attack shiny Landorus. This was faster than finding a non-shiny, non-perfect 0 attack Fluttermane. And I won't even have to use bottle caps on it. Tell me you do not think this is faster and more efficient than getting this fellow in Ultra Sun and Moon or the modern games. You won't and can't. I will, actually, if you won't. That's because despite the catch being so quick, transferring Landorus up through bank to home and opening up Violet took me 18 minutes. So hilariously, it's about the same speed as Fluttermane if you count the transfer, which you should, because it's actually a real con for aiming for older Pokemon. Anyway, immediately upon transfer, I changed its Terra type to Poison, and then it was time to EV train it. His EV spread is 132 HP, 4 defense, 116 special attack, 4 special defense, and 252 speed. So I gave him 13 HP ups, 2 health wings, 4 resist wings, 11 calcium, 6 genius wings, 26 carbos, and 1 zinc. I also gave him a modest mint and an ability patch that I had left over, since Sheer Force Landorus is only natively available from the Dream World. His moves were easy to get. Protect, Sludge Bomb, and Substitute were all available from the TM store in Blueberry Academy, and it already knew Earth Power via level up. The last thing I had to do was purchase a Life Orb from Delibird Presents and apply the PP maxes to the moves. All in all, Smoothie the Landorus took me 38 minutes total. Heatran and Cresselia were who I got from White 2 on Freezeye's team, and they in total took me around 35 minutes each as well, so it seems that this is about the same time. At this point, none of our remaining Pokemon have RNG Minips on them, so I'll start off with Zamazenta, who I transferred in from Shield while I was sending Landorus up through home. It's already level 100, which was because this is my story mode playthrough Zama that I used for Sword and Shield raids. I went to use a Resist Mochi on it, a rare item that you get from doing Ogre Oustin, which removes a Pokemon's EVs. Hilariously, it had no EVs. I think this is because I raised it to level 100 with EXP candies, never EV trained it, and then never used it in any battle besides raids, which don't grant EVs. Well, anyway, it needs to be EV trained, bottle capped, minted, and have its Terra type changed, and have its unique item appear in the auction because we want the crowned version. Hilariously, it took me 18 minutes to find Zamazenta in my boxes in home because I had no clue where it was. Turns out it was already in my Violet. Whoops. Anyway, its item appeared immediately in the auction and I won it. And then I quickly went on to EV training. It needs 68 HP, 244 defense, and 196 speed as its spread. Pretty easy. 6 HP up, 8 health feathers, 24 iron, 4 resist feathers, 19 carbos, and 6 swift feathers will do the job just fine. I also used an Impish Mint on it. As for moves, Wide Guard is a level up move, and Body Press and Protect can be bought in the shop in Blueberry Academy. But Heavy Slam has to be material farmed and crafted, so that took quite some time. After I did that, I took it to Hyper Training, changed its Terra type, and Much Shield the Zamazenta was ready to fight. All in all, it took me 42 minutes to train and find it. As for Freezeye's team, I find that there is no good comparison here. He really didn't have anything like Zamazenta. Ah well. Who's next? Why don't we round out the legendaries with Latios? Luckily, it's available in Scarlet and Violet thanks to Snacksworth. It's in Paldea, kind of near Chi-Yu. Luckily, I never used my Master Ball, but I could have RNG'd one with the item printer if I had. And double lucky, the Snacksworth legends are all fully randomized with no guaranteed 31s. This makes the odds of getting the attack stat we need only 1 in 16 or so without any of the extra nonsense. And these are reasonably quick resets as well. The one thing that sucks about them is that you can't view their summary on catch. For most Pokemon, if you set send to box to manual, when you catch them, you'll see their summary screen without having to open an extra menu. This is not the case for the Snacksworth Legends. I think it's because they don't have Pokedex entries, so that screen never even shows up no matter what. Well, anyway, after 35 minutes of resets, I get my 1 attack Latios. In case you're wondering, at level 50, if the stat is uninvested, 0 and 1 IVs are actually the same end stat. Now I have to buy mints and bottle caps to fix up its stats, and its EVs are very standard max special attack, max speed for special defense. So I just give it 26 calcium, 26 carbos, and 1 zinc. As for Latios' moveset, Luster Purge is a level up move, but the rest are TMs. Protect and Tailwind were from the store, but I had to forge Draco Meteor by farming items, which took a while. I also had to get his item from the auction, which is the Soul Dew. Last thing after that was changing the Terra type to Steel, and Azure the Latios is done. Latios took me 57 minutes total because farming for TM ingredients is kind of tedious. The safest comparison here is probably Iron Hands from Freezeye's team, because that's a Pokemon you just kind of have to get lucky for as well. And while Latios should have been slower, they both actually took about the same time. So I guess we can say that hunting for a specific IV, as long as there's no extra boosted odds of perfect IVs, is always going to be a similar time, which is pretty good to know. Now, the last 2 Pokemon are going to be some of the simplest, and we'll start with Grookey. All I had to do was find a random Grookey in the coastal biome of the terrarium, which took 4 minutes or so. It didn't need any special stats, but it would need a lot of patching up. And the first thing I did this time around was actually its moves. Protect was from the store, and Woodhammer was a level up move. I actually also already happened to have the TM for Grassy Glide lying around. Fake Out was the only thing that took any amount of time, as it's an egg move. Luckily, you don't have to breed to get egg moves these days. A move will transfer over to a Pokemon as long as you have an empty move slot and you can learn the move another Pokemon knows via the Picnic feature. I had to purchase a Mirror Herb and give it to Grookey, then I deleted one of his moves, and then I put a Morgram that I had that knew Fake Out. I opened up a Picnic, closed the Picnic, and Grookey knew Fake Out. And that was it. After that, I leveled it up twice to evolve it twice into a Rillaboom and gave it the PP maxes. Then I began the training. Its spread was 60 HP, 252 attack, 4 defense, 4 special defense, and 188 speed. So I gave it 6 HP ups, 26 proteins, 4 resist feathers, 18 carbos, 8 swift feathers, and 1 zinc, along with an adamant mint. After that, I used bottle caps to hyper train it. I bought a miracle seed at Delibird Presents, and I used an ability patch to give it the hidden ability Grassy Surge. And Rillaboom is actually one of the only Pokemon whose Terra type isn't changing here. And with that, imagine the Rillaboom is complete. It only took 22 minutes and 6 seconds, which was pretty easy. I only have one friend left to catch, and it's Tyranitar. So I caught a Pupitar in the caves under Alfrenata, whom I quickly traded over to my Violet from my Scarlet. The first thing I did was evolve Pupitar using some EXP candies that I had, and then following that, I fixed up some of its stats. The EVs were simple, 4 HP, 252 attack, and 252 speed. So it was just 26 proteins, 26 carbos, and 1 HP up. After that, we went to the Hyper Training Man in Montevideo to patch up those IVs. I also used an Adamant Mint to fix the nature. For the moves, it already knew Rock Slide, and I had to find Knockoff in the Terrarium. Taunt and Protect were available from the Blueberry Academy store. The last two things were changing its Terra type to Ghost and purchasing a Focus Sash from Delibird Presents. All in all, Meow the Tyranitar took 22 minutes and 12 seconds. Really quick. It seems like the speed of a Mon who doesn't need a 0 attack or 0 speed is very consistent. 22 minutes per Mon isn't so bad, although I wouldn't exactly call it great either. And I didn't catch any Pokemon like this for Freezeye's team. Freezeye also had two kind of incomparable Pokemon in Ursaluna and Abomasnow. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, I can actually compare Moltres to Abomasnow, who took me 3 hours to Moltres his 1. This is because I went for a shiny and I had to do millions of RNG advances for a 0 attack shiny. To be fair, I would have gone for a shiny Moltres here if it wasn't locked, so while it's not a super fair comparison, I did get Moltres quicker. Ursaluna has no real comparisons. It needed a 0 in its speed. I could have bred for it in Scarlet and Violet or something, but it didn't matter in my opinion. Our total time for getting all 7 Pokemon and patching them up was 4 hours and 35 minutes. And that's counting Galarian Moltres, who, despite me not using, I did spend an hour on, and I think it's fair to count it. Freezeye's team? Well, it took 7.5 hours, which is a fair bit slower. But, okay, half of that was literally Abomasnow, who took me 3 frickin' hours. So, yeah, the actual Pokemon catching doesn't seem to have changed much. But with that, Bugsy's team is done. You can check out the rental code here if you'd like to use it. I hope you find it fun. All in all, Freezeye's team took 17 hours and 36 minutes. Bugsy's? 6 hours and 30 minutes. Even with a literal entire hour wasted on Galarian Moltres, this is by far the fastest team building challenge I've ever done. Is this even worth talking about anymore? Is it even bad? Well, I've thought about that question a lot, and I think it's clear that Game Freak put a lot of effort into improving things in the DLC. But I keep coming back to what Kphotic said in our interview about my Gen 8 team building video. These are all band-aid fixes, and to be honest, they really didn't change much from before. Now you might think, hold on, money grinding and terraforming are huge fixes, but these just brought the game in line with older games that had good money farming options, whereas Scarlet and Violet really didn't used to. Same with Terras. They introduced the problem of Terra Shard farming. That didn't exist before. All the item acquisition, TM acquisition, it hasn't changed. Those are basically the same. And we still have Pokemon that are not capturable in Scarlet and Violet. It does not make any sense to me. Competitive Pokemon is 2 games at this point. One about team building in-game and acquiring fellows, and one about battling and battle strategy. I find both fun, and I'm sure many people can agree. Competitive building, a lot of the time, is kind of like Diablo or World of Warcraft. It's like some randomized loot drop gathering game. It's just a time grind. You can minimize it with a well thought out plan, especially in older games, but it's kind of like shiny hunting. It's an activity I do to pass the time in car rides or something. RNG a dude in Gen 4, EV train it, etc, etc. I don't think that this is something that you should have to do for a competitive game. You should just have a slider that changes the stats. You shouldn't need to worry you have to replay the Crown Tundra because you need a different Calyrex. Or you shouldn't even have to think, dang, I should buy a game from 2019 to compete in a game from 2024. It doesn't make any sense. And if I'm honest, there's no real reason to build competitive mons anymore other than competitive play. Like before, training Pokemon just for battle facilities was actually a normal thing to do, and a reason that many people engaged with the breeding mechanics at all. But they removed all of that, and they made it easy, but like, not easy enough? Lowering the bottle cap IV requirement was good, but why is there one at all? Why is there a mint for every nature? Couldn't the item mint just let us change the nature in a separate menu? Same with bottle caps. Why is it a 31 IV or you get no help? The answer is because these are band-aid solutions slapped on that would be easy enough to implement without making any new menus or something like that. And I've already gone on quite the rant about the exclusive legends. This is such clearly money-grubbing practice. They're making the full sale on the DLC every time. People will have to purchase some games to get these mons. Will it be a ton? I don't know, maybe not. But the fact that it's not zero, to be honest with you, is frankly ridiculous. I don't know, maybe I'm too crotchety at this point, but my ideal solution is threefold. 1, bring back battle facilities. 2, make Pokemon harder to train. Make it like Gen 5 again. Maybe 6 if you're a widow baby. And 3, for competitive online play only, allow the use of a showdown-style team builder. This would let the grind be slower, but have a purpose, and let competitive players just jump right in without having to worry about this stuff. To me, this is the only real solution. But I'll keep playing these games and testing out the team building. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Till next time.